The call came exactly 7 days after we moved into our dream home. The woman on the other end whispered, "Don't tell your husband. Come alone." Then she hung up before I could ask a single question. I had no idea that one secret meeting would expose the biggest lie in my marriage. My name is Hannah Brooks. I'm 34 years old, a physical therapist, married to my husband, Daniel, for 8 years, and until that phone call, I believed we had finally built the peaceful life we'd worked so hard for. We couldn't afford a huge house, but after years of saving, we found a beautiful 2-story home just outside town. It wasn't flashy. It had an old oak tree in the front yard, a wraparound porch, and a kitchen I instantly fell in love with. The previous owner was a widow named Margaret Ellis. She looked to be in her late 60s. During the closing, she smiled politely but seemed unusually emotional. As she handed me the keys, she held my hand for a second longer than expected. "Take good care of this house," she whispered. "I will," I promised. I assumed she was simply sad to leave the place where she'd spent decades. Now I know that wasn't the whole story. The first week went smoothly. Daniel threw himself into unpacking. I decorated every room. Our 12-year-old son, Noah, claimed the upstairs bedroom with a skylight. For the first time in years, life felt settled. Then, on the 7th morning, my phone rang from an unknown number. "Hello? Hannah?" "Yes." A long silence followed. Then an older woman's voice. "This is Margaret." "The former owner?" "Yes." Her voice shook. "I need to see you." I frowned. "Is something wrong?" "Don't tell your husband." My heart skipped. "Why?" "I can't explain over the phone." "Please. Come alone." Before I could answer, she ended the call. I stood frozen in the kitchen. Daniel looked up from his coffee. "Everything okay?" For one brief moment, I almost told him. Instead, I heard Margaret's words echoing in my head. "Don't tell your husband. I just got a spam call." The lie tasted bitter. That afternoon, curiosity won. Margaret had asked me to meet her at a small botanical garden across town. She was already sitting on a bench when I arrived. She looked exhausted. As soon as she saw me, tears filled her eyes. "I'm sorry for asking you to come alone." "You've frightened me," I admitted. She nodded. "I know." She reached into her purse and pulled out an old photograph. "There are people in this picture who lied to both of us." I looked down. The photo showed a much younger Margaret standing in front of the house. Beside her was a teenage boy. And beside him stood my husband, Daniel. My stomach tightened. I looked up sharply. "What is this?" Margaret whispered. "That boy was my son, Adam. He and Daniel were best friends." I frowned. My husband never mentioned him. "I know. Because after what happened, he stopped talking about this house." A chill ran down my spine. "What happened?" Margaret stared at the ground. 20 years ago. My son disappeared." I blinked. "What?" "He was 18. He left one evening. He never came home." I felt my pulse quicken. "The police?" "They searched for months. No answers." I looked back at the photograph. "What does this have to do with Daniel?" Margaret swallowed. "He was the last person to see Adam alive." The words hit me like ice water. I immediately stood. "No. My husband would have told me." She slowly shook her head. "I don't believe Daniel hurt my son. But I do believe he has been hiding something for 20 years." I wanted to leave. Everything about this sounded impossible. Then Margaret handed me a worn leather journal. "I found this while packing. It was hidden beneath loose floorboards in the attic." I frowned. "Our attic?" "Yes. The house you live in now." She gently pushed the journal toward me. It belonged to Adam. My hands trembled as I opened it. Most of the pages were ordinary. School. Friends. Dreams. Then, near the end, one sentence stopped me cold. If anything happens to me, Daniel never betrayed me. Someone else did. I stared at those words. What does this mean? Margaret whispered. I don't know. I was hoping you could help me. My mind raced. Daniel had never mentioned Adam. Never mentioned this house. Never mentioned being questioned by police. Nothing. Why? I drove home in complete silence. Daniel was grilling dinner when I arrived. He smiled. You're home. Then he looked at my face. Hannah. What's wrong? I placed the old photograph on the patio table. His smile disappeared instantly. He didn't even need to look twice. His hands began shaking. Where did you get this? I met Margaret. His face turned completely pale. You, what? She called me. She told me to come alone. For several seconds. Daniel couldn't speak. Finally, he whispered something I never expected. I'd been terrified of this day for 20 years. I looked him straight in the eyes. Then start talking. He slowly sat down. Before he could say another word, someone knocked loudly on our front door. 3 police detectives stood outside. The oldest one looked directly at Daniel. Mr. Brooks. We need to speak with both of you. Then he glanced at the journal in my hands. And I believe you've already found the evidence we've been looking for. Daniel looked like he couldn't breathe. The lead detective held up his badge. I'm Detective Harris. We're reopening Adam Ellis's missing person case. My knees nearly gave out. Reopening? He nodded. Mrs. Ellis contacted us after she found Adam's journal. Daniel lowered his head. I knew this day would come. I stared at him. Then tell me the truth. Now. He looked at the detectives before speaking. 20 years ago, Adam and I weren't just best friends. He was like my brother. The detective quietly said, Go on. Daniel swallowed hard. The night Adam disappeared, we argued. I felt my stomach twist. It was about money. Adam had discovered that his uncle, Victor Ellis, had been secretly taking cash from Margaret's family construction business. Victor convinced Adam to stay quiet until he could gather proof. Instead, Victor discovered Adam knew. That night, Adam asked Daniel to meet him behind the old community center. He gave me a flash drive. Daniel's voice cracked. He said, if anything happens to me, don't trust Uncle Victor. I looked at him. What happened next? I heard someone coming. Adam told me to leave. I refused. He shoved me toward my truck. Go, he yelled. I drove away. And I never saw him again. The detective nodded slowly. We verified that part years ago. I frowned. Then why wasn't the case solved? Detective Harris sighed. The flash drive disappeared. Daniel closed his eyes. I panicked. I hid it inside the attic floorboards of Margaret's house. My heart stopped. The attic? He nodded. I thought I'd come back the next day. But the police questioned me. Then rumors spread. I became afraid. I convinced myself someone else would eventually find it. But nobody ever did. Margaret whispered through tears. Until I sold the house. Silence filled the room. Then I remembered something. The journal. I quickly flipped through the last pages again. One page felt unusually thick. I carefully separated 2 glued sheets. A tiny memory card slid onto the table. Everyone froze. Detective Harris immediately placed it into an evidence bag. I think, he said quietly. This is what Adam was trying to protect. 3 weeks later, investigators recovered the files. They weren't family secrets. They were financial records, contracts, forged invoices, bank transfers. Everything pointed toward Victor Ellis. For over 20 years, he'd quietly stolen millions from the family business. When Adam confronted him, Victor made Adam disappear. The investigation led police to an abandoned hunting property Victor had owned decades earlier. There, detectives finally found Adam's remains. Margaret cried harder than anyone I've ever seen. But through those tears, she finally had answers. Victor, now living under another name in a neighboring state, was arrested. The case dominated local news for weeks. Everyone praised the detectives. But during one press conference, something happened I never expected. Margaret stepped to the microphone. She looked at Daniel. For 20 years, I blamed the wrong young man. She took his hand. My son wrote the truth. Daniel never betrayed me. Her voice broke. I should have believed him. Daniel couldn't hold back his tears. I should have been braver. I should have gone back. I should have told the police everything. Detective Harris gently interrupted. Fear delayed justice. But it didn't erase the truth. Months later, our town held a memorial for Adam. Nearly everyone attended. Friends, neighbors, former classmates. Margaret asked Daniel to help carry Adam's photograph to the front of the ceremony. When people saw them walking side by side, many quietly cried. After the service, Margaret handed me a small wooden box. I wanted you to have this. Inside were the original brass house keys. The house always felt unfinished after Adam disappeared, she said. Now, it finally feels like a home again. I hugged her tightly. I'll take care of it. I know you will. That night, Daniel and I sat together on the porch beneath the old oak tree. I almost lost you, he whispered. I nodded. You almost did. I should have trusted you. Yes. But we're here now. He looked toward the attic window. For years, I thought silence protected everyone. It only protected the lie. I reached for his hand. Then let's never live that way again. Sometimes people think the biggest secret inside a house is hidden behind its walls. They're wrong. The biggest secrets are often carried by the people living inside it. Our home didn't give us a perfect life. It gave us something far more valuable. The truth. And sometimes, the truth arrives exactly 7 days after you move in.